Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
All right, welcome to a brand new episode of The Pint. My name is John, and I am all by myself this evening. So here's what's happening with this episode. It's going to be a little shorter than a normal episode, but I have overstretched myself a little bit this week. Besides working a ton, I'm guesting on a couple shows, and I'm recording 2 other Pint episodes this week. So it's just, there's not a lot of time for me to get stuff done. I have to watch the movies I have to watch to record those episodes. And I don't have a ton of time to edit an episode of a significant length. The RoboCop episode, which is coming very soon, is like an hour and a half long. So it takes some time, and I don't have that time this week. Unusually for me, Saturday I have a social thing, Connecticut Cult Classics, Hellraiser double feature. So I can't do that night. So you're going to get a different kind of episode. I'm going to review a movie, The Batman. Okay. And on these episodes where I do the shorter ones or solo ones, the format's going to change a little bit. I'm going to go through the nuts and bolts of the movie, writer, director, all that stuff. I'm going to go through the cast, talk about them a little bit, and then I'm just going to give my likes and dislikes of the movie, and then I'm going to hit you with the rating at the end. So that'll all fit into a nice, neat little package. Won't go through the plot of the movie, as it were, because it's not as much fun without other people here to joke and laugh about that stuff. I mentioned I guested on a couple other shows in the last few days. I'd like you people out there listening to check them out because they're great shows. One of them is called Review It Yourself. A guy named Sean is the host of that. He is out in England, in rainy old England, and he does a show where he basically has you go on and review movies, and he's doing a new series where he wants you to take a film that you like that's kind of derided, I guess, and kind of tell you what you like about it. Right, so I picked Alien 3, and as of this recording, I think it'll be out in a week or two. Review it yourself, check that out. And then, because I just went all international up in your ass this week, I joined Billy Dunham, B. Dizzle from We Watched a Thing, and discussed the latest Jurassic movie, Jurassic World Dominion. So if you want to hear my opinion on that, go check out We Watched a Thing and listen there. Also, these shows are really cool. So maybe check them out, maybe throw them in your subs. Give them a chance. Both really cool guys. Let's get into it a little bit here. The Batman was released on March 4th of this year, so 2022. Directed by a guy named Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves, who is coming back to direct the second installment. This movie did well enough for Warner Brothers to necessitate a sequel. Matt Reeves has directed films such as Cloverfield, the original Cloverfield, and the second 2 movies in the most recent Planet of the Apes trilogy, I think Dawn and War of. I've never seen any of those movies. I own them all. I want to watch them all. A very goofy reason is people have told me that The Rise, the original one, is kind of sad. Like, I guess the Caesar monkey is, like, mistreated. And I hate shit like that. I love animals, and I always feel bad in movies when animals are mistreated or hurt. So I'm never in the mood to see that, but I know that these movies are great, supposedly, so I gotta check them out. Reeves also co-wrote the film with a gentleman named Peter Craig. Peter Craig is probably writing pretty high right now because he's one of the writers of Top Gun Maverick, which is just blowing up the world. And he also wrote the Ben Affleck movie, The Town. The Boston crime thriller, The Town, if you ever saw that. That was a bad Boston accent, by the way. I understand that. So, The Batman was filmed all over Scotland, England, and Chicago, right here in the good old US of A. And let's see who's in this thing. All right, let's get into it. Here's the cast.
My God, it's full of stars.
All right, as Bruce Wayne / Batman, we've got Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson, of course, everybody's going to go right to Twilight, but the guy's much better than that. People give this guy shit all the time. You know what? You're like 23, 24 years old. They back up the Brinks truck of money and say, hey, we're going to do two things right now. We're going to make you a fucking millionaire for playing a glittery vampire. Oh, and every fucking woman on Earth is going to be into you for some period of time. You know, don't say no to that. I like the way he played Batman. We'll talk about the Bruce Wayne part a little bit later. Zoe Kravitz as Selena Kyle / Catwoman. She has been in things like Mad Max Fury Road, and also she's the daughter of Lenny Kravitz and what's her name? Lisa Bonet. She's beautiful, and it was great to see her as Catwoman. I like this iteration. I'm hoping to see more of that too. Jeffrey Wright has been in Syriana. He's been in a bunch of the Daniel Craig Bond films. He plays Lieutenant James Gordon. At this point, not Commissioner Gordon, Lieutenant James Gordon, who at this point in the story is like the only ally of Batman within the GCPD. So he's feeling him out. He knows that he's trying to do the right thing. Story-wise, by the way, too, just to give it out there, this is taking place in year 2 of Bruce Wayne's crusade against crime in Gotham. So it's not year 1. He's not a straight rookie, but he definitely isn't the seasoned Batman we know. Colin Farrell, a lot is said about this performance, is Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, who in this film is more played as a club owner / up-and-coming mob boss. The big thing with this is he's obviously in a ton of makeup because Colin Farrell is, you know, truly one of the most good-looking guys in Hollywood. And in this, he plays just a fat lump of shit. You would never know it's him. It kind of... I like Colin Farrell a lot. I don't really know why they had to do that with this, why there's plenty of fat, good actors out there, you know, and I'm not making a case for, you know, he took a fat guy's job, but it just seems kind of weird. Like, why did we need to go this way with him? But he's good. So I'm not complaining. Paul Dano, who was in Little Miss Sunshine, and, let's see, he was in, of course, There Will Be Blood. He had his milkshake drinking, if you recall. He plays the Riddler. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. John Turturro, Jesus from The Big Lebowski, and, you know, he's a favorite of the Coen brothers, and he was in those Transformer movies. He plays Carmine Falcone, the, kind of the current mob boss in Gotham City. Andy Serkis, who played Caesar in those, Planet of the Apes movies we just talked about a second ago. And also is obviously from Lord of the Rings and Avengers Age of Ultron, pardon me. He plays Alfred. I like him as Alfred. We'll talk about it in a second. We'll get there in a second. Let's see. Peter Sarsgaard has a small role. District Attorney, Gil Colson. He was in the Green Lantern movie. Actually, if you want to go a little bit further back in DC history, he's also, the Skeleton Key, if you ever saw that. He's in a bunch of stuff. So that's kind of our main cast there. I'll go right out there and say this. I like this cast. I thought this was a good cast. I thought that there was good dynamic between the actors in their roles. Yeah, so I like this cast. I think it was a good base to start with. So the story, as I mentioned, it's year 2 in Gotham for Bruce Wayne, aka Batman. His crusade is moving along, and essentially he gets involved in a series of murders committed by the Riddler, who in this is like a serial killer. So yeah, it's a little bit different. Who's baiting Batman with these riddles, and as it were, it becomes about something bigger. And there's ties to the Falcone mob families, and then there's the Catwoman woman becomes involved, and she is somehow involved with the Falcone name as well. Penguin is this underling who's trying to become the big boss. So there's a lot jammed in here. let's go through my likes and dislikes now.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
First like, I am going to go with the no fucking Batman origin scene, right? We've seen it a trillion fucking times. We all get it. Batman and American comic book characters in general are part of America's lore almost, like fairy tales. And it feels like no matter what generation you've grown up in from the 60s to present, you probably know how most of the bigger comic book heroes became what they are, right? You could pull a kid off the street and say, Batman's origin story, and you're going to hear parents, movie theater, Zorro, Pearls, Joe Chill, murder, vengeance. You're going to hear all that. And we don't need that anymore, right? We don't need it anymore because it's ingrained. And this movie went the very smart way, very much kind of like what the most recent Marvel MCU Spider-Man movies did, where they just, we didn't see Uncle Ben die. We didn't have to see that. And actually with the last movie, they kind of changed it up a little bit and tied it all in together with Aunt May, but we didn't have to see it because we all know that Uncle Ben dies, right? We all know that the Waynes die. We all know why Bruce Wayne is doing what he's doing. So that was wonderful. I enjoyed that very much. Number 2, I'm going to go with, I really liked Robert Pattinson as Batman. I liked a lot of the things they did with him as Batman. In the beginning of the movie, there's this whole scene where there's, it's Gotham City. By the way, Gotham City, it's never light outside and it rains all the time in this world. But there's some criminals and they're out and they're doing their thing. They're harassing pedestrians on the train. And they essentially seem to understand that they may have brought Batman upon them. And there's this really great scene, and they don't do it enough in the movie, but where, like, they look down alleyways when they hear a noise, because it's year 2, and the idea behind Batman is that he doesn't come out in the day. He's this force of vengeance that comes out at night. He's kind of got this whole urban myth thing going about him. And they do this wonderful thing where all the criminals are very, like, what was that? They're very apprehensive. And there's a great scene where they're kind of looking into this doorway. And he comes out, actually. And it actually gave me chills because, it got it right. I felt like it got it right. I felt like it got what Batman kind of is, right? He's the boogeyman. He's to criminals the boogeyman. But I liked him. I liked him a lot as Batman. Another I'll piggyback on top of that. On top of that one is I really like the fact that the writers utilize the idea that he's in year 2 here very well. And what I mean by that is that he is not like the Batman of, he's not a black belt Batman yet. He's very much a lower tiered Batman. He screws things up. And there's a couple scenes in this movie. There's a scene where he has to take a jump off of a building. And in every other movie you've ever seen, when Batman jumps off a building, he either jumps off the building or he uses his grapple gun, and it's no problem. He gets to the top of the building and he goes to jump and he's scared because that's what you would be. Now, I get it. This is a cartoon or comic book hero. We can't really assign reality to it, but I like the fact that they did. I like the fact that this guy isn't willing to just jump off a building. And when he does, he utilizes this, kind of like blow up bodysuit. He fucking almost kills himself. Several scenes early in the movie where he's in the Batcave, and you don't see it, but you can see car parts everywhere. So they're obviously giving you the idea that he is putting together a Batmobile. The scene where they bring the Batmobile into play, I think, is fantastic. But one of the best things they did in that scene is, he's using the Batmobile to intimidate the Penguin, and he's revving the engine up, and it's just this monstrous rumble, and then the Batmobile stalls. Which just, again, it goes to prove that this guy isn't 100% on top of everything yet. So I really like that a lot. I did like the aesthetic and feel of this Gotham. I do think, it was a little bit rainy and a little bit dark all the time, but I like the fact that they didn't go with, like the Batman Returns and or Batman Forever through Batman and Robin kind of crazy, comic book and or cartoon Gotham. They kind of kept it similar to the Nolan movies, darker for sure, but similar where this is a real city. It feels like a real city. I liked that quite a bit. I liked Paul Dano in his role. I like him as an actor. I liked him in his role. But I have a dislike that's going to go on top of that as well. I like the fact that this was not a Batman that was entirely reliant on all of his gadgets, and it was more of a detective story. I'll say this out loud because I want people to hear me. My good buddy Lou Skywalker, who's been on the podcast and just a great friend, years ago used to say to me, they have to make a Batman movie where he's a detective because he's the world's greatest detective. He stars in Detective Comics. They have to make a movie like this. And I said, Lou, they will never make a movie like that because it's got to be like an action extravaganza. Nobody's going to go see a detective Batman movie. Well, you know what? They made a detective Batman movie. They made it work. And I think most people seem to like that aspect, that they brought him along from just being kind of a Cape Crusader hero to his origins where he's figuring things out. You've really never seen that in these other movies, or not a lot. So I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. And again, I'll cap off my likes, with the cast. I thought that the cast was very good. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, she was good. She had a good flirtatious relationship with Batman, and she's gorgeous. And I know that might sound, I'm not trying to sound like a male pig by saying that, but Catwoman has to be, right? Catwoman has to be, who's played Catwoman in the past, right? We've had Michelle Pfeiffer, we've had Halle Berry, we've had Anne Hathaway. You can't go demure or plain. You have to go gorgeous. That's part of it, and they did that very well. Okay, so let's go through some dislikes real quick. Numero uno. This movie is way too fucking long. I'll repeat that. This movie's way too fucking long. This movie is 2 hours and 56 minutes, I think. That's 3 fucking hours. When this came out in the theaters, I wanted to see it in the theaters because, I don't go to the theaters as much anymore, but I still want that experience. And I couldn't find time. I couldn't find time. I'm 46 years old. If I go to the theater at 9 to see this, I'm going to sleep through the second half. It's going to fucking happen. It was an easier pill to swallow knowing that it went to HBO Max within like 45 days, and that's where I watched it finally, was in HBO Max. But even then, I started it at 6 o'clock on a Sunday night, and it ended at, fucking 9? Like 9:15? And it's not that being a 3-hour movie isn't a problem. There are great 3-hour movies. This movie is desperately in need of an editor because there's just a lot of stuff going on here that could have been cut down a little bit. There's just a lot going on that I don't think it kind of padding. Certainly it felt padded to a point. It felt like sometimes we kind of got answers to things and then they went and reiterated it again. I don't know. So this was definitely too long. Another thing I wasn't crazy about. Now this could be something that could be fixed in the future possibly, but if they don't fix it in the future, it stays as a dislike. I didn't like Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne. I don't say that meaning I don't like the gothy look or anything like that. I'm fine. I'm fine with him being kind of an emo guy. What I didn't like about it was that we didn't get enough Bruce Wayne. If that was a purposeful storytelling method because they plan on showing you his growth as Batman in the next movie, that's fine. And what I mean by that is this. In this movie, they make it very clear that he doesn't care about Bruce Wayne. He only cares about being Batman, and Bruce Wayne acts as his public face only. He doesn't even care about his public face. That's even true in the comics to a degree, and the cartoons and everything, is that he's definitely more Batman than Bruce most of the time. What I'm hoping comes of this is I'm hoping that as he does in the comics and in the movies, he eventually realizes that to be a successful Batman, he has to keep up the Bruce Wayne part of everything. So if in the next Batman movie we get more Bruce Wayne and we see that he's not gothy anymore and he's accepting his kind of bullshit fake veneer of being, this man about Gotham playboy kind of thing because it's helping to add to his ability to be Batman, then I'll like it. If in the next movie it's 5 years later and he's still, I don't care about Bruce Wayne, I just want to go to a Panic at the Disco concert, then they failed. So this dislike might become a like. Okay, might become a like. Another dislike is the Riddler character. I like Paul Dano in this role. I really do. I would like to have seen what he could have done with a more classic Riddler. Even a more classic Riddler with an edge, right? But, he's the Zodiac killer in this fucking thing. And then you find out, he's an incel and he's got, message boards. I don't mind that part of it. I kind of like the idea at the end where he's this, very 2022 villain, keyboard warrior type thing. But I don't know if that's the Riddler, And I try not to be that guy. I try not to be the guy that says, well, you got it wrong from the comic or you got it wrong from the cartoon. I try to see things a little bit broader. I understand when you're adapting something to the big screen, it's got to be a little bit different. But I just don't know if I don't know if I cared for this version of the Riddler. I like the aesthetics. I like the duct tape and the glasses and, I liked all that, but I just don't know if I liked it in the end, right? So it looked cool, but it doesn't really work story-wise. Not so much a dislike, because it really isn't a dislike. It'd probably fit more on a like, but a little bit of kind of oddness to it, is the Michael Giacchino score is really good, but the Batman theme is obviously, the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, is this the Imperial March? What? It's so obviously based on that, which is a iconic piece of music in a movie, that every time it played, it took me out of it a little bit. So I think I'll give it that bit of a dislike, was that I wish it wasn't so on the nose with what it was trying to do. I actually liked it, but I just felt like every time it came up, I went from paying attention to the story to going, is that Empire Strikes Back? What's happening here? So that's a little bit of a dislike. Going into the lack of Bruce Wayne story, I kind of disliked that we didn't get very much Alfred. And when you did, it was just, kind of moving the plot along. He gets blown up at one point, stuff like that. So I kind of wish that they had done a little bit more, with Andy Serkis's Alfred. Again, there's a part 2 coming out. So I think we're going to be able to get a lot more, going that way. So that's really it for my likes and dislikes. I'm sure this is one that I'm reviewing after having seen it about a month ago. So I'm trying to put all my thoughts into one basket. I usually am much closer to recording time when I watch these things, but those are the things that stood out to me the most. The length is the killer in this movie. The length is no way should this be 2 hours and 56 minutes. This movie should be 2 hours plus 220 maybe. You got a solid half hour you could trim and cut down and move around and it would not make a big difference. So that all being said, let's rate this motherfucker.
Have you gentlemen seen your midterm grades yet?
Well, they're not posted yet, sir.
I've seen them.
All right, so it's just me. So it's not going to take long. I enjoyed this movie. I have a feeling this movie will grow on me on a second viewing. Problem being is that I don't know if I ever have the 3 hours necessary to just want to sit down and rewatch this again. It's on HBO Max. I will buy the Blu-ray eventually because I'm sure there's a bunch of extras that I'd like to check out. I love that stuff. But I'm going to go with 2022's The Batman on a scale of 0 to 5. Quarter and half scale optional. I'm going to say this one hit me at a solid 3.25. A lot of it is very enjoyable. A lot of it is very cool and very different. And then there's bits of it that just feel sloggy and slow and not 100% necessary to get through the story. It feels like they were trying to build 2 movies and kind of put it into one. All right. So that's how I feel about that. So that's it for this week. Short episode. Next week, I should have more time to get back to editing full-length episodes. I hope you enjoyed this. I really do. You know where to find us. At The Pint Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. And also on Facebook, The Pint Podcast. You can find us there. And hey, I recommended a couple shows earlier. I'll repeat the names of those shows. We Watched a Thing. I'll be talking about Jurassic Park Dominion. And Review It Yourself. I'll be talking all about Alien 3. Defending Alien 3. I love Alien 3. Find out why. Also, if you're a big G.I. Joe fan, if you don't know this, the Pint Podcast has a little brother podcast, Chaplain's Assistant Motor Pod, hosted by my good buddy, G.I. Gary. Gary does an awesome... Gary's 19 times better of a solo host than I am, because he does it every week. Gary will sit there and talk about the latest news in G.I. Joe comic books, go back and talk about G.I. Joe cartoons, the movies. No matter what he talks about in the beginning, he ends every episode with a breakdown of a G.I. Joe vehicle or a Cobra vehicle from any point in the line's history. It's always about a 30 to 40 minute podcast. One of my favorites, a must listen. I think he is fairly bi-weekly. So please, Chaplain's Assistant Motor Pod, check him out. Follow him on Twitter. Follow him on Instagram. I think he has a Facebook page too. I could be wrong, but check him out on Facebook as well. And that's it. 2022's The Batman 3.25. I'm John. See ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!